Welcome to Heavenly Reels, where every reel inspires faith, hope, and purpose. If this content speaks to your heart, like, share, and subscribe to help spread the light. Join the Heavenly Reels family and be uplifted, one reel at a time.
When people speak of soulmates, they often imagine a flawless union, two people meeting at the perfect moment, untouched by regret, seamlessly aligned in faith, personality, and purpose. But God, in His infinite wisdom, rarely writes stories that way. He writes them through wounds, through waiting, through people who are still becoming. This is one such story. Daniel Mensa lived a life built on structure. Every morning began the same way. Alarm at 5:30, prayer by 5:35, coffee by 5:45. His Bible lay neatly beside his bed, pages worn but carefully kept. Faith was not something he questioned. It was something he guarded. He had grown up in a home where Christianity meant discipline. His father believed holiness was proven through consistency. His mother believed love was shown through sacrifice, not words. Daniel learned early that being good mattered. Being right mattered. Being faithful meant never slipping. As an adult, he carried those lessons tightly. He worked as a civil engineer, respected by colleagues, admired at church. He served faithfully, tithed regularly, prayed earnestly. Yet somewhere beneath the obedience lived a quiet fear that if he failed, even once, everything might fall apart. Grace Thompson's life had unfolded very differently. Grace had learned about God after learning about heartbreak. Her childhood had been loud and unstable, shaped by arguments, absence, and uncertainty. Church was not a constant, it was a rescue. When her mother encountered Christ later in life, Grace watched transformation happen in real time. She saw addiction loosen its grip. She saw forgiveness rewrite endings. To Grace, God was not strict, He was merciful. Not distant, He was near. But mercy did not erase memory. Grace carried the weight of past mistakes, relationships she entered too quickly, decisions she made while searching for love in the wrong places, moments when she doubted God would ever fully restore her. Though she loved Jesus deeply, she often wondered if she was still a disappointment. Daniel feared failing God. Grace feared being rejected by Him. They did not know each other yet, but heaven already did. They met on a rainy Saturday afternoon at a church outreach program that felt ordinary at best. The building was old, the paint chipped, the air thick with dampness. Volunteers trickled in slowly. Daniel arrived early, clipboard in hand, mentally organizing tasks. Grace rushed in late, breathless, hair pulled back hastily, sneakers already stained with paint. "You're on the painting team," Daniel said, barely looking up. Grace smiled brightly. "Perfect. I love painting. We're on a schedule," he replied. She laughed softly. I promised not to mess it up. Something about her ease unsettled him. Throughout the day, they crossed paths, passing brushes, holding ladders, exchanging small talk. Grace asked questions about his work, his faith, his favorite hymns. Daniel answered politely, carefully. When rain leaked through the ceiling and Daniel slipped, soaking his pressed clothes, Grace rushed over, laughter gentle and kind. "Well," she said, helping him up, "now we're both imperfect servants." Daniel smiled before he realized he was smiling. That night, Daniel replayed her laugh in his mind. Grace prayed quietly, thanking God for unexpected connections. They began seeing each other more. Church events, volunteer projects, group gatherings. Conversation grew deeper. Grace spoke openly about doubt, forgiveness, grace. Daniel listened, challenged and intrigued. Grace admired Daniel's steadiness. He admired her compassion. But admiration soon met reality. Daniel struggled with Grace's transparency. Her past made him uncomfortable, not because he judged her, but because it exposed a version of faith he did not understand. Grace sensed his restraint and began to hold back, afraid her honesty would cost her love. One evening, the truth surfaced. "I feel like you're always measuring me," Grace said softly. "I'm not," Daniel replied quickly. "You are," she said, tears welling. "I feel like I have to earn your approval." Daniel's voice tightened. I'm just trying to honor God. Grace shook her head. God doesn't need protecting for my story. Silence followed them home. Days turned into weeks. Daniel withdrew, overwhelmed by fear of choosing wrong, fear of loving imperfectly. Grace felt old wounds reopen, wondering if love was ever meant to stay. Then came a sermon on grace. Not gentle grace, not easy grace, but costly grace, the kind that met sinners where they were and transformed them through love. Daniel realized he had been asking Grace to earn what God freely gave. That night, he stood outside her door, heart pounding. I'm afraid, he admitted. I don't know how to love without control. Grace listened, arms folded tightly. I don't need perfection, he continued. I need honesty, and I need God to teach me how to love you. Grace whispered, I'm afraid too. But I believe love grows when people choose each other again and again. They prayed, awkward, emotional, sincere. Something shifted. Their relationship did not become easier, but it became truer. They learned to argue without abandoning, to apologize without pride, to pray when words failed. Daniel learned leadership meant humility. Grace learned commitment meant patience. Premarital counseling forced them to confront flaws, control, insecurity, fear. In one session, the counselor asked why they wanted to marry. Daniel answered, because she reminds me that God is gentle. Grace said, because he shows me that faith can be steady and safe. They married on a spring afternoon beneath stained-glass light. Their vows were simple. I promise to love you, Daniel said, voice trembling, not because you are perfect, but because God first loved us. Grace smiled through tears. I promise to walk with you, trusting God to shape us together. Marriage did not fix them. It refined them. They faced financial strain, family tension, seasons of doubt. But they faced them together, praying, forgiving, choosing love again. They learned that soulmates are not found. They are formed through grace, through patience, through God. And when asked how they knew, Grace would smile and say, because love taught us. Daniel would add, and grace kept us. They were imperfect. They were deeply loved. And in that love, they found something stronger than perfection. A covenant written by God himself. The first year of marriage taught Daniel and Grace what no counseling session ever could. That love, once promised, must be practiced daily. They moved into a small apartment with creaking floors and thin walls. The kitchen window never closed properly. The shower only ran hot or cold, never in between. It was imperfect, but it was theirs. Grace filled the space with laughter and music. Daniel filled it with schedules and lists. At first, these differences felt charming. Then they felt heavy. Daniel liked quiet mornings. Grace liked conversation. Daniel planned months ahead. Grace trusted God for tomorrow. Small disagreements surfaced about money, time, expectations. One night, after an argument about finances, Grace sat on the floor crying. I feel like I'm failing you, she whispered. Daniel knelt beside her. No, he said softly. We're learning. That's not failure. They prayed there on the floor, hands clasped, learning that humility was the language marriage required. Marriage settled into rhythms. Morning prayers became shared. Grocery lists were written together. Some days felt holy. Others felt painfully ordinary. Grace struggled when Daniel worked long hours. Daniel struggled when Grace spent emotionally on others. One evening, Grace snapped, I feel invisible. Daniel listened, really listened. I'm sorry, he said. I forgot that love is presence, not just provision. They learned to speak truth without cruelty, to listen without defense. Faith was no longer theoretical. It was lived, in forgiveness, in patience, in showing up tired but willing. The call came late one night. Grace's mother was sick. Hospitals replaced routines. Prayer felt desperate instead of peaceful. Grace wrestled with fear she thought she had outgrown. Daniel stayed steady, holding her hand, praying when she could not. I don't understand God right now, Grace admitted. Daniel answered honestly, neither do I, but I trust him with us. Her mother recovered slowly, but the season left its mark. Marriage, they realized, was not about escaping pain. It was about not facing it alone. Years passed. They learned when to speak and when to be silent, when to lead and when to yield. They failed each other. They forgave each other. Grace learned that stability did not mean loss of passion. Daniel learned that vulnerability did not weaken faith. On anniversaries, they returned to the church where they first served together. They prayed, not for ease, but for endurance. Love no longer felt like fireworks. It felt like roots, deep, strong, unseen but unmovable. One quiet evening, sitting on their small balcony, Grace rested her head on Daniel's shoulder. "Do you think we were always meant to meet?" she asked. Daniel smiled thoughtfully. "I think God knew who we needed before we did." Grace nodded. "So soulmates aren't found. They're formed," he replied, "through choosing each other, through choosing God." They sat in silence, grateful, imperfect, loved, still becoming. And in that becoming, they understood, love does not conquer all by removing struggle. It conquers all by staying, by growing, by trusting God to finish what He begins. And their story continued, not as a fairy tale, but as a testimony.